What would you do if seemingly out of nowhere, a playful nickname that you were given by someone that you loved magically turned into an alternate life that you didn't live, but that now you have to suffer the consequences for? This other person that everyone is mistaking you for is evil, has done awful things, and now you're stuck. Well, if that sounds interesting to you, that's exactly what today's story is about. Hello everyone, I'm Cece with the Crucible of Character, and I will be reading today's story, which was posted to the r/Scary Stories subreddit by Ericious, and it's entitled Tony Pizza. Make sure to stay to the end to see how this character makes it out of such a wild story. And if you do enjoy these videos, please make sure to like, comment your thoughts, or maybe things you might do differently, and subscribe for more daily content. I really do appreciate it, as we're trying to hit 100 subscribers before the end of the month. Anyways, without further ado, the story starts like this. My boyfriend has always had bad luck with nicknames. He calls me Shrimp, or Hot Stuff, or, for like a week straight, he called me Tinder Toes. But now, he's started calling me the worst nickname yet. He calls me Tony Pizza. Why Tony Pizza, I ask him, but he just shrugged. Why not Tony Pizza? At first, I was a good sport about it. It made no sense, but what of it? Sometimes things just don't make sense. Soon, however, our other friends started calling me Tony Pizza. Hey, Tony Pizza's here, they would say, or Yo, Tony Pizza, and it would annoy the crap out of me. But I took it. It was just a nickname after all. It couldn't hurt me if I didn't let it. Sticks and stones, etc., etc. When the phone calls started coming in, that's when it went too far. I was sitting on the couch, scrolling mindlessly through Netflix, when my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. I sighed, figuring it was just telemarketers, but when I picked up the phone, the lady asked if she could speak with Tony. Who, I asked, thinking it was one of my friends playing a joke. Tony, she paused, and I could hear papers rifling. Pizza, Tony Pizza. I rolled my eyes. Hardy har har, who is this? Is that you, Margot? No, this is the National Debt Collection Service, and we're attempting to collect a debt on a Tony Pizza. I sighed. Tony Pizza is just my nickname. There isn't a real Tony Pizza. Well, real or not, they owe $15,000 in credit card debt that has landed on our desk. That dried my mouth up pretty quickly. How much? $15,000. So, are you Tony Pizza then? We talked for a while, me insisting that the name was just a nickname and not a real person, and the woman on the other end of the phone finally said they would check their records again, but that all the data they had pointed to the person at this address who had my number. I hung up on her after assuring her that I would try to get my boyfriend to call them, and called his cell phone. This was a little more than a weird nickname now, and if he was trying to stick me with a bunch of weird debt, then I wasn't going to play ball. He had been distant lately, this man, who had once professed such love for me, and I sensed him pulling away the last few times we had been close. I should have sensed it before now, but I was always a little slow to pick up on others when they were preparing to go. I called a few of our mutual friends, even Margot, but they all said that they hadn't seen him today. They said they would keep an eye out for him, and when I told them why, they laughed. Classic Mike, they all said, and when I had tried them all, I called him again. He was supposed to be at work, delivering pizzas for Domino's, but his cell phone went straight to voicemail every single time. I shook my head. He would do this on my day off. I got dressed and decided to just walk down to the Domino's and see if I could catch him there. With any luck, he'd be waiting on an order, and I could get him to answer some questions for me. I grabbed my keys, my phone, and a can of mace. You can't be too careful these days, right? I was walking past the manager's office when Mr. Debray stuck his head out and called my name. I just wanted to discuss the rent on the other unit with you. It hasn't been paid in 2 months, and I'm getting a little impatient. I raised an eyebrow. Other unit? What other unit? He shuffled some papers around before finally finding the one he was after. Unit 402, rented out to a... He shook his head. Tony Pizza? Really? This must have been passed on by my secretary regardless. It has your address as the primary address, so it must have been you or Mike. I ground my teeth together. Now he was getting apartments with that stupid name too. This was all becoming a little much. What was he up to? When I found Mike, he had a lot of explaining to do. I'm going to find him right now. Sir, let me ask him what all this is about, because I haven't rented any other apartment than my own. I headed out then, the manager telling me to let him know what I discovered, and I left the complex in a heated state. I was going to find him and give him a piece of my mind. He was going to answer for this if it was the last thing I did. I had been worried that he was planning to leave me, but stealing from me and using a stupid nickname that he had given me to do it was a step too far. I made it to Domino's, but as I walked in, I had to stop myself from throwing my phone at the guy manning the register. "Hey, it's Tony Pizza!" "Save it, Damon." "Where's Mike?" Damon scratched his head, one of his dreads bouncing. "Dunno, he never showed up for work today." "Somebody did show up, looking for you, though." I lifted an eyebrow. "For me? Who would come here looking for me?" "The cops," Damon said. "You must have passed them on the street because they were just here." That made me nervous. The cops didn't just start looking for you for no reason. What did they want? They were asking about you, wanted to know if anyone had seen you. They said they were looking for someone named Tony Pizza, and you're the only one I know with that name. I felt like screaming. Tony Pizza, Tony Pizza, Tony Pizza. What the heck was happening today? I hated that stupid nickname, and now it seemed to be following me everywhere. Was this some kind of elaborate joke that Mike was playing? If it was, it wasn't funny. I was getting pretty tired of this. And what's more, I was beginning to feel afraid. This was all starting to feel like some kind of Twilight Zone episode, and I was ready to turn the channel. You told them that's not my name, right? You let them know that it's just a nickname so they wouldn't keep roaming around looking for some mook named Tony Pizza, right? Damon looked at me oddly for a minute before answering. I meant to, but it's the weirdest thing. I couldn't actually remember your name. I don't know if I mentioned it was a nickname either. I did give them you and Mike's address, though, so they might be waiting for you at home. I shook my head and walked out, telling him I supposed I would go home and wait for the cops. Then, couldn't remember my name. Damon and I had gone to high school together. He had known me since elementary school. Though I wouldn't say we had ever been friends. He was a burnout, but I didn't think his memory was that bad. As I walked up the sidewalk, my phone rang again, with a number I didn't recognize. Turned out to be another bill collector looking for Tony Pizza. Tony owed this agency about $12,000. Nothing too crazy. And I let them know that I wasn't who they were looking for. They seemed pretty sure I was, but I didn't have time to play with them. I hung up on them, but I had no sooner gotten my phone back in my pocket when it rang again. This one was from a parking garage a couple of blocks from the apartment, calling to let Tony, know that his car was going to be towed if he didn't come to pick it up before the end of the day. So now it was cars too? Mike was really pushing it now, and if the police were at my apartment, I was going to let them know about it. The cops were pulled up outside my apartment complex, and when they saw me, they asked if I was Tony Pizza. I scoffed. Do I look like Tony Pizza? One of the cops was a big-bellied, good old boy type, but the other was more professional, and he put a hand out to stop his partner from getting angry. Sorry, I'm Officer Page, and this is Officer Gardner. We're looking for an individual who may be connected to a crime. Do you have a moment to speak with us on the matter? I agreed, and we stepped into the lobby of the complex so they didn't have to interview me on the sidewalk. We received an anonymous tip this morning about a suspect who left the scene of he weighted his words, a pretty nasty crime. There was no description of the suspect, but we were told they heard the individual call the person Tony Pizza the night before. I sighed. That's impossible. I was in my apartment all night last night. Officer Gardner started to say something, but Officer Page cut him off. Is there anyone who can verify that? I thought about it and shook my head. Mike had worked late last night, and I had been home alone until he had gotten there about 11 o'clock. He had taken a shower and gone to bed after kissing me on the top of the head. He said, I love you, which made me feel a little weird because he hadn't said it for about 2 weeks by then. But I had said it back and put it out of my mind. It was one red flag among many, and I was starting to see them now as they piled up. No, I guess my boyfriend couldn't. But I can't seem to find him. I gave them Mike's information, and they wrote it all down as they asked me more questions. What did I do for work? Did I own a car? Did I own a gun? On and on, until I finally asked what exactly they were looking for. They said they couldn't really tell me about that, but as Officer Gardner looked at the information I had given him about Mike, I saw him poke Officer Page and whisper something to him furiously. Officer Page crinkled his brow, nodding before turning back to me. You said your boyfriend, Michael August, came home last night about 11? Yeah, he kissed me on the forehead and went to bed. I don't know what time he left for work, but he was gone when I woke up. I heard the jingling of cuffs as Officer Page reached for his restraints. I am sorry, but we need to detain you until we can get this figured out. I took a step back, and I saw the small twitch as his free hand reached for his weapon. Don't do anything foolish, please. We just need to detain you for our own safety. You aren't being charged with anything yet. We just have to follow protocol. I submitted. I didn't seem to have much of a choice, and I found myself being led to a nearby squad car as I heard the manager ask, if they wanted to see the apartment. I don't know what we could expect to find, Officer Gardner started, but the manager cut him off. No, I mean the other apartment. I have an apartment rented under the name Tony Pizza if you'd like to have a peek. Gardner and Page looked at each other, and as Page took me to the car, I kept repeating that 402 wasn't my apartment, and I had never once been inside it. Officer Page put me in the back of the car, not saying anything, as he closed the door, and I was forced to sit in the car and wait for them to come back. The not knowing was killing me. The indecision and the unknown quantity of the apartment was driving me mad. What was in there? What would they find? More importantly, what had Mike been doing? I had to believe that this was something Mike had been doing these last few weeks, changing things, opening accounts in my name, and now he's prepared to disappear and leave me holding the bag. When Officer Page came back about an hour later, he looked decidedly green around the gills. I need to search you, he said, arming sweat off his face. We're taking you to the station. I imagine there will be a lot of questions. Why? What did you find? What's in that apartment? He pulled me roughly from the back of the car and took the few things I had in my pockets, my phone, my keys. When it came to my wallet, however, he opened it and began to paw through it. Then he stopped suddenly, and I turned my head to see him looking at my ID card. His face darkened, anger spreading across it, and when he flipped the wallet around, he was practically shouting, "Why did you lie? You could have just told us your name. Why waste our time since you knew we'd find out?" He had it so close to my face that I had to crane back a little to read it. When I did, I felt my own face crinkle in confusion. Instead of my name, the ID card read Tony Pizza. It was all a blur after that. They took me in, booked me, and I was suddenly the prime suspect in 5 murders. All of the victims that had been killed in their homes by someone with a knife and trophies had been taken. Those trophies, usually parts of the people, had been found in the apartment. They had been laid out in a piece of wall art that depicted a freshly made pizza. It seemed to tie in with my new identity. I told them I had no idea about any of this, and while they never found any evidence that I was in the apartment or at the crime scenes, the connections were too many to release me. Another bit of evidence hit me hard too. The last victim, the one killed the night before they came to talk with me, was what had sunk me. The man's name was Michael August, and the picture they showed me was not the man I had been sleeping beside for nearly 2 years. As I sit here and wait for my turn at court, I have to wonder if Tony Pizza wasn't the man I loved all along. The end. Wow, that was super interesting. I knew kind of what the twist was going to be from the beginning, as that intro to the video kind of explained, but it's still, I didn't really think that it was going to be the boyfriend, maybe a setup, less mystical than I thought. I thought maybe there was going to be some more mystical stuff, and then when the guy who was at the cashier at the pizza shop didn't recognize her name or didn't really remember, I guess now it kind of looks more convenient than mystical, but I was almost thinking that there was a curse or something that was put on her, and so everyone literally forgot who she was and only remembered Tony Pizza. Well, I think there was a lot of things that definitely could have been done differently. One, I'm probably going to only have friends that are going to not point the cops to my house in this situation. And if anybody comes to me, if any cops come to me and they say, "Hey, have you seen this person?" and I know the person, I'm not going to just give them their address, because if they have, probable cause or anything else, they can just get the address, right? Like if it's that serious, they can just get the address. I'm not going to give anything up that they already have, because that's suspicious, especially if you can't verify that they are actual cops, right? These actual cops would already have that info. That's my point. Another thing, if I knew the cops were waiting at my place, I might try and go to a lawyer first. Yeah, that's a smart idea, right? Try and get somebody on your side who can represent you better than you can represent yourself, so you don't fall into a pit that you can't escape. Try and explain to them what happened, how you've totally been set up and all this and that, right? Now, if you are already in the police station, try and get a lawyer there. Plead the fifth, try and get a lawyer there, right? I don't think that that's a scummy thing to do. I think that the average Joe on the street, especially, millennial age and younger, probably doesn't have a absolutely astounding grasp on laws. And so I don't think saying, "Hey, look, I'm not going to be representing myself very well here." Well, you know what? You probably shouldn't say that, because then it opens up a whole other can of worms. But I think smartest play, and this is me having watched Better Call Saul very recently, I think smartest play is call a lawyer. Try and get somebody on your side. Try and get somebody who can represent you better than you can. Try and not lock yourself into a pit if you are already heading towards being set up. I think in this situation where there's people calling you, and again, those people, that's not terribly verifiable over the phone, right? Yeah, the fake boyfriend might have actually opened up all these accounts and been doing this and that and ruining everything, right? Especially with the credit and all that. But at the same time, who hasn't gotten a call with somebody who has their actual name saying, and you owe $20,000 right now or else we'll, take you to jail. And then it doesn't happen, right? Because a lot of the times it's a scam. So there's that. I probably wouldn't take that super serious. If it was a nickname, then maybe be a little bit more on alert. If I knew the cops were at my place, I feel like the whole story, she was kind of moving down a funnel, and she really did not have to. And she kind of kept getting further and further locked into fewer and fewer possible outcomes until she was stuck in, being booked at the police station, right? Now, whereas she wasn't at the murders and she had never stepped foot in the apartment, they could probably very reasonably do a sweep of her apartment and the other apartment and see how much, DNA she leaves behind everywhere with hair and skin and all that. And then see that none of that is in the other apartment, hopefully. And then, if there's a way to verify her identity, I mean, if she pulled out her phone and used it at any point, they could say, okay, her phone was used in her apartment, which isn't an alibi, but it's better than just, well, I was kind of sitting in my bed all night, and you just have to believe me, officer, right? Basically, the moral of the story is be smart, think ahead, think about things before you do them, think about the possibilities you might be closing as you do things, right? I think a lot of times, and especially with younger people, it's easy to only see a few feet in front of you, right? So you have to be really careful about that. And you have to understand taking a really big jump might seem great in the moment until you realize that you just jumped off a cliff, right? So with all that being said, be smart and be safe. Appreciate you all for watching the video. Hopefully you made it to this point, and if you did, make sure to like and comment your thoughts and what you would have done differently, and subscribe for more daily content. I'm CC. Love you all. Bye.